One aspect of Active Directory that has tended to confuse people, especially on exams, is this idea of an Active Directory site. So let's talk about those just a little bit here for a second. First of all, the big question is, and the real problem with sites is when I ask the question, what is a site, there are two answers. There is the normal, everyday administrator's definition. If I go into most administrators' offices and say, how many sites do you guys have? They'll say, well, we've got a site here, we've got one over on the west side of town, we've got one, in a different state, and we might even have one in Canada. Well, what he's talking about are physical sites where they have other offices in their company. That's not what Active Directory considers a site to be. So one of the things we need to do is, first of all, get our nomenclature correct here. By site, we don't necessarily mean a physically separated location. Let's look at a diagram here. If you remember, when we created our first server, it created the domain, then we could add other servers to it, and then our users come in. And then we could put organizational units in, then we could add other servers and other organizational units. Now so far we haven't dealt with the site. As a matter of fact, there is a default first site that has been installed, and since sites weren't mentioned on any of these computers, they all joined that same default first site. And let me show you something here. If I go out to Administrative Tools and I go into Active Directory Sites and Services, one of the things that you're going to see here is, notice the default first site name. And what servers are in that? Well, the only server that we have right now. Well, by default, it's going to set up a site, and if you never mention sites, you'll always have everyone in the same site. Now, understand that our world has changed since Active Directory was first designed and implemented. What we're using a site for now is to separate parts of the physical network that don't have fast, reliable connections. Now, it used to be that we always had trouble with this. And in the Microsoft world, the Active Directory world, there's two kinds of connections. There's a connection between two locations that is high bandwidth, very reliable, and always on. And then there's connections to other locations that are not high bandwidth and that can be somewhat suspect as far as availability. Here's the deal. When Active Directory begins to replicate its information all around, all the users, the groups, the group memberships, and so forth, as long as they're in the same site, Active Directory takes kind of an attitude and says, you want that information over there? Then I'm just going to throw it over there. And I'm going to take whatever bandwidth I need, I'm going to get it over there fast. And it's great. And it doesn't hog the bandwidth, but it consumes what it needs and it gets it over there, and it's very quick. But we may not want that to this location that is separated by a network that's not so fast or maybe not so reliable. So we put it in a separate site. This one up here really should have a box around it, and it would be in the default first site, and this would be in a different site. Now, once I set up two different sites, Active Directory will never replicate data between these two sites until I put a site connector between them. That's the first thing about sites. They are used to connect groups of computers where the underlying physical network may not be fast and reliable. Now, here's the thing that will really confuse a lot of people, and that is that a site really has nothing to do with domains. Notice in this example, we have two domains, but across our two domains, for whatever reason, this server and these users were put in a separate domain, but they're all kind of grouped together on this same network right here that has a fast, reliable connection between them, but we still have this intermittent connectivity between them and the rest of the world. Again, keep in mind, the site does not care about crossing domains or anything. And I want you to think about this. The Active Directory, the domains, the organizational units, and the groups, that's the logical grouping of your company. Sites have to do with the actual physical underlying network structure of the company. Now, if you can keep that straight, you got it. But be careful with the nomenclature on sites And be careful when they give you a question on this exam about sites and domains and OUs. Get your little piece of paper or your write-on wipe-off board and draw the triangles and the little boxes and the circles. Draw out what they're telling you, and then apply the question to that drawing and see if you can't figure it out. I guarantee you most of the time you will find the right answer will jump out at you if you'll diagram that thing and think about it. So that's an Active Directory sites overview.